Sofia Ramirez, a cleaning lady, saves John Hall, who was choking in a restaurant, without knowing he was the owner of a very large and wealthy company. But she never imagined that. What if a single act of kindness could change your life forever? Watch until the end to uncover the unexpected twist that will leave you speechless. Before we continue, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching the video from. And don't forget to subscribe. Sofia Ramirez stood by the window of the small diner, her hands deftly wiping down the last table of the day. The clatter of dishes and the murmur of conversations began to fade as the late afternoon sun cast a warm glow across the room. She took a moment to glance out at the bustling street, where life moved at a frantic pace, a stark contrast to her own existence. The weight of her responsibilities pressed heavily on her shoulders, yet her heart brimmed with dreams of a future filled with possibility. As the daughter of immigrants, Sofia often found herself reflecting on her family's sacrifices, the countless hours her parents had spent working tirelessly to provide her with opportunities they never had. Each day, she reminded herself of her purpose, to honor their journey by becoming a nurse, a beacon of hope and care for those in need. With a deep breath, she returned to her task, her thoughts wandering to the nursing school applications that loomed ahead. The road to achieving her dream was fraught with challenges, but she was determined to persevere. Her mind danced between images of her future self, donning scrubs and making a difference in patients' lives. She envisioned the smiles on her parents' faces when she would finally don her cap and gown, a moment that would affirm their sacrifices as worthwhile. The thought filled her with a warmth that kept her motivated, even as the diner's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead and the familiar, greasy scent of fries and burgers hung in the air. As she finished cleaning, Sofia caught sight of a familiar face among the few remaining customers. The diner had its regulars, and she often found solace in the comforting routine. There was Mr. Thompson, a retired schoolteacher who always ordered the same thing, or Mrs. Jenkins, who came in daily for her slice of pie. Each patron had a story, and Sofia cherished the brief interactions, the small snippets of humanity that punctuated her long shifts. Despite the exhaustion that came with her job, she found joy in the connections she fostered, a reminder that even in the mundane, there was beauty. However, today felt different. As the last few customers trickled out, Sofia noticed a new face enter the diner. He was tall, with an air of authority that commanded attention without a word. His dark hair was neatly styled, and his tailored jacket suggested a life of privilege. He moved with a quiet confidence, his eyes scanning the room as if assessing the environment with a critical gaze. Sofia felt a flicker of curiosity mixed with apprehension. She wondered about his story. What brought him to this diner, tucked away in a neighborhood that rarely saw the wealthy? As he approached the counter, Sofia observed how the staff treated him with a mix of respect and caution. They whispered among themselves, glancing nervously at him as he placed his order. It was clear he was someone important, someone whose presence demanded a certain level of deference. Sofia's thoughts drifted as she wiped the counter, realizing that her life was a stark contrast to his. She was accustomed to the hustle of a busy diner, the late nights spent studying in her cramped apartment, and the sacrifices made for a brighter future. In that moment, she felt a pang of longing for a world she believed was out of her reach. As the man took a seat by the window, his attention was quickly absorbed by his phone, leaving Sofia to wonder if he even noticed the small diner around him. She watched him from a distance, intrigued by the juxtaposition of his polished appearance against the diner's humble ambience. He was engrossed in whatever was on his screen, oblivious to the world around him, and yet there was something about him that drew her in. It was as if he carried an unspoken weight, a story hidden behind his confident facade. The afternoon wore on, and the diner began to fill with the lunchtime rush. Sofia moved swiftly, her heart beating in rhythm with the clinking of plates and the chatter of patrons. She was in her element, navigating the chaos with grace. However, her gaze occasionally drifted back to the man, now seated at a corner table with his meal in front of him. She could see the tension in his posture, the way he absent-mindedly rubbed the back of his neck as if trying to shake off a heavy burden. It was a fleeting moment, but it struck a chord within her. This man, with all his apparent success, was perhaps not as invulnerable as he appeared. In a sudden turn of events, the atmosphere in the diner shifted dramatically. The sound of laughter and clinking silverware was abruptly interrupted by a loud gasp. Sophia's heart raced as she turned to see the man clutching his throat, his face contorting in panic. Time seemed to freeze around her as the realization of what was happening set in. He was choking. The diners around him erupted into chaos, some shouting, others jumping up from their seats, unsure of how to react. The scene unfolded in a whirlwind, voices overlapping in a cacophony of concern, but Sophia felt a strange sense of clarity pierce through the confusion. Without a second thought, she surged forward, cutting through the crowd with purpose. The world around her blurred as she focused solely on the man in distress. Her training as a nursing student kicked in, and she instinctively remembered the technique she had studied, the Heimlich maneuver. It was a simple yet effective method, and she had practiced it countless times in simulations. As she reached him, she could see the fear in his eyes, a silent plea for help that ignited a fire within her. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her, but she pushed it aside, focusing entirely on him. Sophia positioned herself behind him, her heart pounding in her chest. She could hear the frantic whispers of the other diners, the urgency of the situation amplifying the tension in the air. With steady hands, she wrapped her arms around his waist, her training guiding her movements as she thrust inward and upward, hoping to dislodge whatever was blocking his airway. The seconds stretched into eternity, each moment filled with the potential for panic. Then, with a sudden, powerful gasp, he expelled the food lodged in his throat, the sound echoing in the diner like a sacred release. As the man stumbled forward, gasping for air, the room erupted into applause. Relief washed over the patrons, their collective anxiety replaced with admiration for the stranger who had come to his aid. Sophia stepped back, her breath coming in quick succession as she processed what had just transpired. She felt a rush of adrenaline mixed with a deep sense of fulfillment. She had saved him, yet as she caught her breath, her eyes met his, and the world around them faded into the background. In that fleeting moment, something shifted between them. The gratitude in his gaze was palpable, and it ignited a flicker of connection that neither of them had expected. As the applause continued, Sophia felt a warmth spread through her, a strange blend of pride and vulnerability. She had acted on instinct, driven by her desire to help, and now, in the aftermath, she was acutely aware of the bond that had formed in that instant of crisis. As the diner's atmosphere began to return to normal, Sophia found herself standing at the threshold of a new chapter. She had always been the caregiver, the one who put others first, but this encounter had awakened something within her, an awareness of her own strength and the possibility of deeper connections in her life. The man, still recovering from his ordeal, looked at her with an intensity that sent a shiver down her spine. In that shared silence, they both understood that their lives had just intersected in a way that would leave an indelible mark on their hearts. After the chaotic scene in the diner, John Hall sat at the edge of his booth, still processing the whirlwind of events that had just unfolded. His heart raced not only from the shock of nearly choking, but also from the unexpected connection he felt with Sophia Ramirez. As the diner's atmosphere returned to normal, he found himself captivated by her presence. Her dark hair fell gracefully over her shoulders, framing a face that radiated kindness and determination. The way she had rushed to his side, her confidence shining through in that moment of urgency, left an indelible mark on him. Sophia, meanwhile, had returned to her duties, wiping down tables and attending to the other customers. Yet, her mind was far from the mundane tasks at hand. She replayed the incident over and over, the rush of adrenaline still coursing through her veins. The applause from the other diners echoed in her ears, but it was the look of gratitude in John's eyes that lingered with her the most. It was a gaze that seemed to pierce through the surface, revealing depths of emotion that she had never encountered before. For a fleeting moment, she felt seen in a way that was both exhilarating and terrifying. When John had offered to take her out for coffee, Sophia felt a wave of uncertainty wash over her. How could she possibly step into his world, a world filled with wealth and sophistication, when she was merely a nursing student juggling multiple jobs to make ends meet? The very idea of sharing a space with someone like him felt like an insurmountable challenge. She had always been the one supporting her family, the unwavering pillar of strength, but now she was faced with the vulnerability of potential rejection. Declining his invitation felt like the only safe option, despite the flicker of excitement it had ignited within her. As the days passed, John's fascination with Sophia grew. He found himself returning to the diner with an increasing frequency, each visit an opportunity to catch a glimpse of her. He observed her from a distance, how she interacted with the other staff, her laughter mingling with the clatter of dishes and the hum of conversation. It was in those moments that he learned more about her, not through direct conversation but through the warmth she exuded, the way she connected with others, and the dedication she displayed in her work. He spoke to a friend who worked at the diner, piecing together a narrative of Sophia's life. The details were heart-wrenching yet inspiring. She was a diligent student, a daughter who sacrificed her time and energy for her family's betterment. The struggles she faced as the daughter of immigrants resonated deeply with him. He admired her resilience and the fire within her that drove her to pursue a nursing career despite overwhelming odds. For John, who had spent much of his life isolated in the shadow of his success, Sophia represented a world he longed to be a part of, a world of genuine emotion, struggle, and triumph. Yet, amidst his admiration, John was plagued by a sense of urgency. He wanted to reach out to Sophia, to bridge the gap between their lives, but he hesitated. There was a persistent fear that lingered in the corners of his mind. What if she saw him only as a wealthy restaurant owner, someone who could never truly understand her plight? He battled with the notion that their different backgrounds might create an insurmountable barrier, a rift that could never be crossed. Sophia, on the other hand, was awash in a sea of conflicting emotions. The attention she had received from John felt surreal, almost like a dream. Her friends noticed the change in her demeanor, encouraging her to embrace the unexpected and to consider the possibility of dating him. They spoke of how rare it was to find someone like John, successful yet seemingly down to earth. Their words were both a balm and a source of anxiety for Sophia. It was thrilling to imagine a relationship with someone like him, yet the self-doubt that had always accompanied her loomed large. She spent her evenings poring over her textbooks, but her thoughts would often wander back to John. He was a mystery, an enigma that intrigued her deeply. What did he think about when he was alone? Did he ever feel the weight of expectation that she carried? As she contemplated these questions, a flicker of hope ignited within her. A hope that perhaps, just perhaps, their worlds could intertwine in a meaningful way. However, the shadows of insecurity crept in swiftly. Sophia struggled to reconcile her feelings for John with her perception of her own worth. She often found herself standing before the mirror, scrutinizing her reflection, wondering if she was enough for someone like him. The voice of doubt whispered in her ear, reminding her of the disparity between their lives. She was a working-class student, while he was a successful businessman. The thought of stepping into his world filled her with trepidation, causing her to retreat into her comfort zone. Despite the encouragement from her friends, Sophia often found herself hesitating at the precipice of possibility. The thought of pursuing a relationship with John was thrilling yet daunting. She weighed the potential for joy against the fear of heartache, and each time, the scales tipped toward caution. Her heart yearned for connection, but her mind warned her of the potential pitfalls of crossing the invisible divide that separated them. Meanwhile, John's determination to connect with Sophia only intensified. He began frequenting the diner at different times, hoping to catch her during her shifts. Each time he saw her, his heart swelled with admiration. He noticed the way she diligently attended to her work, the soft smile she offered to customers, and the moments of laughter shared with her colleagues. These glimpses of her life outside the brief encounter, they had only fueled his desire to know her on a deeper level. Yet, he remained acutely aware of the walls that seemed to spring up whenever he considered approaching her. The fact that she had declined his initial invitation weighed heavily on him. Did she truly not want to see him again? Or was she simply overwhelmed by their differences? His mind buzzed with questions, each one layered with the uncertainty of what lay ahead. As the days turned into weeks, Both Sophia and John navigated their separate paths, each grappling with their feelings and insecurities. Sophia threw herself into her studies with renewed vigor, using the focus on her education as a shield against the vulnerability that came with navigating potential romance. Her friends continued to nudge her toward embracing the possibility of love, but she remained cautious, unsure of how to balance her aspirations with her emotions. On the other hand, John found himself increasingly drawn to the idea of reaching out to her once more. The memory of her kindness, the spark in her eyes when she had saved him, lingered in his mind like a beacon of hope. He recognized that their lives were intricately woven with the threads of their pasts and their dreams for the future. As he contemplated the best way to approach her again, he realized that the only way forward was to be genuine and open, qualities he had often shied away from in his world of business. Little did they know that fate had a way of intertwining their lives, pushing them closer together even as they grappled with their own uncertainties. The budding connection that sparked that fateful day in the diner was destined to grow, but only time would reveal the path they would take together. Their stories were just beginning to unfold, and the journey ahead was sure to challenge them in ways they had never anticipated. John Hall found himself frequenting the diner more often than he ever imagined. Each visit turned into a cherished ritual, a moment stolen from his otherwise bustling life as a restaurant owner. The diner was a world unto itself, a cozy haven where the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the sound of clattering dishes and lively chatter. Yet amidst the clamor, it was Sophia Ramirez who captivated his attention. Her laughter was a melody that cut through the noise, and her presence ignited a warmth in his heart that he had long thought extinguished. As the days turned into weeks, each interaction with Sophia deepened their unspoken connection. John would often sit at a corner booth, a prime vantage point where he could watch her glide through the diner, her movements graceful and purposeful. Sophia was a whirlwind of energy as she bustled from table to table, her dedication to her work evident in every wipe of the tablecloth and every smile she offered to the patrons. In those moments, John admired not only her beauty but also her passion, a fierce dedication to her studies and the future she envisioned for herself. She was a nursing student, pouring her heart and soul into her education, driven by an innate desire to help others. Each story she shared with him painted a picture of resilience, illuminating the struggles she faced as the daughter of immigrants. The diner became a sacred space for them, a place where laughter echoed and stories intertwined. John learned about her dreams of becoming a nurse, her aspirations to care for the sick and vulnerable. He listened intently as she recounted her challenges in school, the late nights spent poring over textbooks, and the sacrifices her family made to provide her with opportunities. In return, John opened up about his life, a tapestry woven with threads of success, challenges, and the loneliness that accompanied his wealth. Despite the differences in their backgrounds, their conversations felt effortless, as if they were two souls destined to find solace in each other's company. Sophia felt a surge of confidence blossoming within her as John's admiration lifted her spirits. The way he looked at her, with eyes that sparkled with genuine interest and respect, ignited a light she thought had dimmed during the trials of her life. She had always grappled with insecurities, feeling out of place in a world that often seemed beyond her reach. But John saw her not as a cleaner or a struggling student. He saw her for who she truly was, an intelligent, compassionate woman with dreams that reached far beyond the confines of her current circumstances. Yet, as Sophia reveled in this newfound confidence, shadows of doubt began to creep in. She couldn't shake off the realization that John was wealthy, a successful restaurant owner with a life that felt worlds apart from hers. The disparity in their backgrounds loomed over her like a dark cloud, casting shadows on the bright moments they shared. She questioned whether their connection could withstand the harsh realities of their different worlds. Would he ever truly understand her struggles? Would he see her as an equal or merely as a charity case, a fleeting moment of inspiration in his otherwise privileged life? These doubts gnawed at her, especially when she overheard snippets of conversations about John's business dealings. A particular day stood out vividly in her memory. She had just finished a shift, her feet aching from hours of standing, when she caught a glimpse of John through the diner's window. animatedly discussing something with a colleague outside. The conversation flowed seamlessly, punctuated by laughter and gestures that spoke of camaraderie. Sophia found herself watching him, a smile spreading across her face, until the words she overheard pierced through her reverie. They were discussing a prospective business deal involving the diner, a potential collaboration that could enhance John's already thriving restaurant empire. The excitement in their voices was palpable, and as Sophia listened, a chill swept through her. Suddenly, the warmth of their connection felt distant, overshadowed by a sense of betrayal. She imagined John standing there, contemplating how to expand his business, and she couldn't help but feel like an afterthought, a mere footnote in his success story. In that moment, her insecurities surged to the forefront. Sophia's heart raced as she wrestled with thoughts that spiraled out of control. Had she been naive to think that someone like John could ever truly care for her? Was she just a fleeting moment of kindness in his life, a way to soothe his conscience as he navigated the upper echelons of society? These questions haunted her, causing her cheeks to flush with a mix of anger and hurt. As she retreated into the confines of her own mind, the joyous moments they had shared felt tainted by her newfound perspective. Each laugh, each story, now seemed like a facade, a mask that hid the reality of their differences. The days passed, and with each visit, Sophia found herself withdrawing, her once bright demeanor dimming in the face of her doubts. She was torn between the magnetic pull of her feelings for John and the fear that accompanied them, a fear rooted in her belief that love was a luxury reserved for those who belonged to the world he inhabited. John, meanwhile, was blissfully unaware of the turmoil brewing within Sophia. He continued to visit the diner, eager to bask in the light of her presence, to share stories and laughter that felt like a balm to his soul. He found himself looking forward to their interactions, each moment spent with her a reminder of the genuine connection that had blossomed between them. Yet, as the days wore on, he began to notice a shift in Sophia's demeanor. The laughter that once flowed effortlessly from her lips now seemed strained. Her eyes, once bright with enthusiasm, were clouded with uncertainty. Despite his growing concern, John remained resolute in his desire to understand her better. He sensed a barrier forming between them, a wall built from unspoken fears and doubts. The thought of losing her, of letting the connection they had cultivated slip away, weighed heavily on his heart. He yearned to reach out, to bridge the gap that seemed to widen with each passing day, but uncertainty held him captive. One evening, as he sat in his usual corner booth, John watched Sophia weave through the tables with a newfound intensity, her focus seemingly elsewhere. She was still a whirlwind of energy, yet the spark he had come to cherish felt dimmed. The laughter that once echoed around their shared moments was replaced by a silence that left him feeling adrift. He recalled the warmth of her smile, the kindness in her eyes, and felt a pang of longing that reverberated through his chest. As Sophia passed by his table, he summoned the courage to catch her gaze, but her eyes quickly darted away, avoiding his. The moment stung, igniting a sense of helplessness within him. He wanted to reach out, to tell her that he saw her, that he valued her more than she could imagine. But the words remained lodged in his throat, a testament to the growing chasm between them. A chasm formed by misunderstandings and unaddressed fears. The diner continued to bustle around them, life moving forward, but for John and Sophia, time felt suspended in a delicate balance. Each moment stretched into eternity, filled with unspoken words and hidden emotions. The connection they had forged now hung in the balance, teetering on the edge of uncertainty, as both grappled with their own insecurities and the weight of their disparate worlds. Hurt and confusion wrapped around Sophia like a heavy cloak as she navigated the bustling corridors of her nursing school. The chatter of her classmates faded into an indistinct hum, drowned out by the relentless turmoil in her mind. Ever since that fateful day at the diner, when she had saved John Hall's life, everything had shifted. Their burgeoning connection, once a source of warmth and excitement, now felt like a painful reminder of her insecurities and the chasm between their worlds. She had told herself that love was not for people like her, those from humble beginnings, burdened by the weight of familial obligations and financial strain. Driven by a fierce determination to succeed academically, She buried herself in her studies, filling her days with lectures, lab work, and late-night study sessions. The textbooks became her refuge, each page offering a temporary escape from the emotional turmoil that clouded her heart. She spent countless hours in the library, surrounded by the scent of old books and the quiet rustle of pages turning, her mind consumed with medical terminologies and patient care protocols. The world outside faded away, and for a fleeting moment, she could forget the way John's laughter had lit up her days and the way his presence had ignited a flutter in her chest. Meanwhile, John sensed the shift in Sophia's demeanor. The spark that had once illuminated her eyes now felt dimmed, replaced by a distant gaze that avoided his own. Each time he visited the diner, he searched for her among the bustling staff, but she seemed to slip further away, like a shadow disappearing into the night. The vibrant conversations they once shared dwindled into polite exchanges, and the laughter that had resonated in the air turned into an awkward silence. John felt a growing void in his life, an ache that he couldn't quite articulate. It gnawed at him, a constant reminder of the connection he longed to rekindle. Despite his efforts to reach out, Sophia remained aloof, her barriers firmly in place. He would catch glimpses of her in the diner, her brow furrowed in concentration as she wiped down tables or served food with a practiced smile. But the moment their eyes met, a wall seemed to rise between them, and she would look away, leaving him with an unsettling blend of frustration and concern. He wondered what had changed, what had caused her to retreat into herself. The thought of losing her felt unbearable, a reality he refused to accept. As the days turned into weeks, the season shifted, bringing with it a crispness in the air that hinted at the approach of fall. John found solace in his restaurant, pouring his energy into creating new dishes and perfecting old favorites. He immersed himself in the culinary world, seeking distractions in the kitchen and the smiles of his patrons, yet his thoughts always circled back to Sophia. Her absence felt like a wound that refused to heal, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something profound was slipping through his fingers. John had planned a major event for his restaurant to showcase his latest culinary creations. It was an opportunity to draw in new clientele, and he envisioned a night filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and the tantalizing aroma of gourmet dishes wafting through the air. But more than that, he hoped it would be a chance to invite Sophia back into his life. He meticulously crafted the invitation, pouring his heart into the words, hoping she would see it as more than just a professional gathering. He wanted her to understand that she was more than an acquaintance. She was someone he cared about deeply, someone he wanted by his side. As the evening of the event approached, he found himself pacing the restaurant, rehearsing the words he would say to her. He imagined her walking through the doors, her face lighting up as she took in the elegant decor and the buzzing atmosphere. He envisioned pulling her aside, away from the crowd, where he could finally express the feelings that had been building inside him, feelings he had been too apprehensive to voice. Each time he thought of her, a mixture of hope and fear tangled within him. What if she still felt unworthy of his world? What if she had moved on, leaving him behind? Sophia, on the other hand, grappled with her decision to attend the event. The invitation sat on her desk, a stark reminder of the two worlds that had collided in such an unexpected way. She had considered declining, telling herself that it would be easier to avoid the discomfort of facing John and the sophisticated crowd that would surround him. Yet, a part of her yearned to see him, to feel the warmth of his presence again. The struggle within her was palpable, a tug-of-war between her insecurities and her desire for connection. On the night of the event, the restaurant was transformed into a swirling spectacle of lights, laughter, and enticing aromas. Guests mingled, their laughter echoing against the walls adorned with exquisite art and soft candlelight. John moved through the crowd, his heart pounding with anticipation and anxiety. He was acutely aware of every moment that passed without spotting Sophia, each tick of the clock amplifying his worry. He had hoped she would arrive early, allowing them a moment to breathe, to reconnect before the chaos unfolded. But as the minutes stretched on, doubt crept into his mind. He caught sight of a few familiar faces, patrons who had supported him since he opened the restaurant, but their presence did little to ease the growing knot in his stomach. He poured drinks and exchanged pleasantries, all while casting glances toward the entrance, hoping to see her silhouette against the bright lights. Each time the door swung open, his heart raced, only to sink when it was not her. Meanwhile, Sophia stood outside the restaurant, her heart pounding in her chest. She had dressed carefully, choosing a simple but elegant dress that hinted at her growing confidence. Yet, as she approached the entrance, the weight of her fears threatened to overwhelm her. What if she didn't belong in this world? What if John had found someone else, someone more suited to his lifestyle? The questions spiraled in her mind, each one feeding the insecurities she had worked so hard to suppress. Taking a deep breath, she pushed through the door, immediately enveloped in a whirlwind of sounds and scents. The atmosphere was electric, filled with the sounds of clinking glasses and cheerful chatter. She stood just inside the threshold, her heart racing as she took in the scene. The elegance of the evening was both awe-inspiring and intimidating, and she felt a familiar sense of inadequacy wash over her. But then, through the crowd, she spotted him. John stood at the center of it all, his presence commanding yet approachable. When their eyes met, a flicker of recognition ignited between them, and for a moment, the world around her faded into a blur. She could see the mix of surprise and hope in his expression, and it filled her with a warmth she had thought lost. As he made his way through the throng, Sophia felt her heart race again. But this time it was not out of fear. It was excitement mingled with trepidation. She could sense a storm of feelings brewing between them, and she knew that the moment she had both longed for and dreaded was finally here. Yet, doubt still lingered in the back of her mind, whispering that perhaps this would be the moment where everything would unravel. John reached her, his eyes alight with a mix of joy and relief, but she found herself hesitating. The weight of her fears loomed large, and the question of her worthiness hung heavily in the air. She stood at the edge of their connection, teetering between hope and despair, uncertain of what the evening would hold. The evening air was laced with anticipation, a shimmering promise of connection and perhaps a hint of reconciliation. As Sofia Ramirez entered the upscale restaurant, the ambience enveloped her like a warm embrace. The walls were adorned with art that spoke of elegance and sophistication, and the soft glow of chandeliers cast a golden hue over the gathering. Yet, amidst the glamour and laughter of the elite clientele, Sophia felt a wave of self-doubt wash over her. Dressed in a simple yet elegant black dress, she had made an effort to step out of her comfort zone. The fabric clung gently to her frame, and she had styled her hair in loose waves that framed her face. Still, she felt like an outsider in a world that seemed so distant from her own. The laughter of well-dressed patrons echoed in her ears, and the clinking of glasses formed a backdrop that underscored her hesitance. Despite the beauty around her, the ornate decor, and the exquisite food displayed like art, Sophia's heart raced with uncertainty. She scanned the room, searching for John Hall, the man who had brought her here, the man whose presence she simultaneously craved and feared. Their last meeting had left her reeling, filled with confusion and a sense of inadequacy. As she stood there, the vibrant energy of the event buzzed around her, but Sophia felt isolated, like a solitary island amidst a sea of laughter and conversation. She was acutely aware of her background, the sacrifices her family had made, and the relentless grind of her studies. Sophia's thoughts were interrupted as she caught sight of John across the room, his tall frame standing out even among the crowd of distinguished guests. He was engaged in conversation, his charismatic nature illuminating the space around him. She felt her pulse quicken at the sight of him, the way he moved with confidence, exuding an air of authority that drew people in. Yet, as she observed him, a pang of insecurity gripped her heart. He was a man of wealth and status, while she was merely a nursing student, working hard to make ends meet. The moment he noticed her, John's expression transformed. A smile broke across his face, illuminating his features and dispelling her lingering doubts, if only for a moment. He excused himself from his conversation and made his way toward her, weaving through the clusters of patrons who laughed and chatted, oblivious to the internal struggle that Sophia faced. As he approached, Sophia felt a flutter of hope mingled with anxiety. John stood in front of her, his eyes sparkling with a mixture of relief and excitement. He reached out, taking her hand in his, and for a brief moment, the world around them faded. The chaos of the event dulled, and all that remained was the warmth of his touch and the genuine affection reflected in his gaze. The two of them found a quieter corner of the restaurant, away from the throngs of guests. John leaned closer, his voice low, creating a private bubble amidst the public celebration. They exchanged pleasantries, but Sophia's mind raced with thoughts of her social standing. She couldn't help but notice the surrounding guests, their laughter ringing like a reminder of her differences. As John spoke, Sophia's heart swelled with a mixture of admiration and trepidation. He shared stories of the restaurant, of the hard work that had gone into creating a space that felt both welcoming and luxurious. His passion was contagious, and she found herself laughing at his anecdotes, her tension easing with each shared smile. Yet, as she looked around at the elegant patrons, their polished appearances and effortless ease, the whispers of insecurity began to creep back in. She watched as John interacted with the guests, flashing his charming smile, exchanging pleasantries with people who seemed to glide through life with confidence. Each laugh, each warm handshake, felt like a reminder of the chasm between their worlds. Sophia's heart sank as she caught sight of a group of women dressed in designer gowns, their laughter ringing hollow in her ears. They were the epitome of upper-class sophistication, and she felt like a mere shadow against their brilliance. The conversation flowed, but with every chuckle from the group, a shadow of doubt loomed over her. Did John truly see her as an equal? Or was she just a fleeting interest, a momentary distraction from the life of privilege he was accustomed to? The questions gnawed at her, the insecurities clawing at her confidence, urging her to retreat into the safety of her solitude. Sophia's thoughts spiraled as she clutched her glass of sparkling water, the coolness contrasting with the warmth of John's hand still holding hers. She felt a strong urge to pull away, to excuse herself and disappear into the night. As she caught John's eye, a flicker of understanding passed between them, but the weight of her emotions threatened to overwhelm her. Just as her resolve began to solidify, ready to slip away from the event, John turned to her with an intensity that rooted her to the spot. He spoke of dreams, of aspirations, and how he admired her dedication to her studies. In his eyes, she saw something she desperately wanted to believe, that her worth was not defined by her background or her circumstances. Yet, the echo of doubt lingered, whispering that she didn't belong in his world. Sophia struggled to maintain composure, the internal battle waging within her. She felt the urge to voice her fears, to lay bare the insecurities that plagued her heart. But the moment felt too precious to spoil. Instead, she smiled, though it felt strained, a fragile facade masking the turmoil inside. As the night wore on, Sophia's resolve began to wane. The laughter around her became a cacophony, drowning out her thoughts. She excused herself, needing air, needing space to breathe away the doubts that suffocated her. The moment she turned to leave, she felt John's hand grip her wrist gently, the warmth of his touch igniting a spark of hope. He pulled her closer, his eyes searching hers with a fierce intensity. In that moment, Sophia felt the world around her blur, the noise fading into a distant hum. John's voice broke through the chaos, words tumbling forth like a waterfall, filled with a sincerity that resonated deep within her soul. He spoke of feelings that had blossomed in the quiet moments they had shared, of a connection that transcended class and background. Sophia's heart raced as he confessed what she had longed to hear, that he cherished her for who she was, not for what she had or hadn't accomplished. As he held her gaze, she felt the walls she had built around her begin to crumble. His words wrapped around her like a warm blanket, soothing the insecurities that had plagued her heart. In that instant, she realized that perhaps their worlds could intertwine, that love could emerge from the most unlikely of circumstances. With a surge of courage born from his unwavering gaze, Sophia leaned in closer. She felt the world melt away, and time stood still. Their lips met, a tentative brush that became ignited with passion, rekindling a connection that had flickered but never faded. The kiss was a promise, a declaration that their love could rise above the constraints of their backgrounds, a moment that solidified their bond against the odds. As they broke apart, Sophia felt a renewed sense of hope surging within her. The doubts that had threatened to consume her began to dissipate, replaced by the warmth of acceptance and love. In John's arms, she finally felt seen, valued, and cherished, a feeling she had yearned for all along. As their relationship blossomed, the air around Sophia and John was charged with an unmistakable energy, a delicate balance of hope and anxiety. They had carved out a space for one another, a sanctuary amidst their chaotic lives. Sophia felt a profound sense of belonging with John, yet lurking in the shadows were the uncertainties that accompanied their disparate worlds. As if the universe had sensed their burgeoning connection, it conspired against them. A rival businessman, a figure cloaked in ambition and resentment, began to orchestrate a campaign to undermine John's restaurant, which had become a symbol of his hard work and resilience. The days that followed were filled with whispers and rumors. Sophia could sense the tension in the air as she and John navigated the increasingly hostile environment surrounding the restaurant. They spent late nights together, poring over the menu, discussing plans for new dishes and ideas to attract more customers. Yet, even in these moments of joy, a shadow loomed large. John's past was being dragged into a light he had hoped to keep dim. Sophia stood steadfastly by his side, her heart aching for him, knowing how much he had poured into his restaurant and how much it represented not just a business, but his very identity. Each day brought new challenges as John received anonymous letters filled with veiled threats and insinuations about his family's history. The rival businessman, a former associate of John's father, seemed determined to exploit any weakness he could find. Each letter felt like a dagger to John's heart, reopening wounds he had tried so hard to heal. However, amidst the chaos, Sophia remained a beacon of strength. She encouraged him to confront these challenges head-on, reminding him of the person he had become, a man of integrity and kindness who had built something beautiful out of adversity. As tensions escalated, Sophia's resolve deepened. She became a constant presence in the restaurant, working alongside John, her laughter echoing through the kitchen, instilling a sense of normalcy in the storm. Yet, as she observed the changes in John, his furrowed brow, the weight in his shoulders, she felt a pang of helplessness. She wanted to shield him from the hurt, to take away the burdens that were not hers to carry. Despite her own struggles, she found herself rising to the occasion, determined to be the anchor he needed in these turbulent waters. Then came the day when everything changed. A chance encounter led Sophia to learn the shocking truth. The rival businessman was not just an adversary. He had deep connections to her own family. The revelation struck her like a thunderbolt. Years of silence and unspoken grievances flooded her mind, and she felt the ground shift beneath her feet. This man was seeking revenge for a perceived injustice from the past, an old family feud that had long been buried but now threatened to surface with devastating consequences. Sophia's heart raced as she processed the implications. She felt torn between her familial loyalty and her love for John. How could she reconcile the two? Yet, as she thought about the man who had shown her kindness, who had seen her for who she truly was, her path became clear. She refused to let the past dictate their future. It was time to confront the rival businessman, to stand up for John, and to prove that love and loyalty could triumph over old grudges. The showdown unfolded in the heart of the city, a public confrontation that would draw the attention of many. Sophia's nerves tingled as she stood beside John, their hands intertwined, a silent promise of solidarity. The restaurant had become a battleground, and they were ready to defend it. The rival businessman, smug and self-assured, stood before them, his words dripping with contempt as he recounted the past grievances that had fueled his vendetta. He aimed to shatter John's reputation, to expose what he believed to be the truth, but Sophia would not allow it. As the crowd gathered, murmurs of intrigue filled the air. Sophia took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle on her shoulders. She stepped forward, her heart pounding, but determination igniting a fire within her. With clarity and conviction, she addressed the crowd, recounting the resilience of her family, the sacrifices they had made, and the strength they had built through adversity. She spoke of John's character, his dedication to his craft, and the love they had forged together, a love that transcended their backgrounds. Her voice rang out, unwavering, cutting through the cacophony of doubt and disdain. As she articulated her stance, she could see the shift in the crowd's demeanor. They were captivated, drawn in by her passion and authenticity. The rival businessman's facade began to crack as he realized that his plan was backfiring. The more Sophia spoke, the more she illuminated the truth that old grievances could not tarnish the love and respect that had blossomed between her and John. With each word, she felt empowered. She was not just defending John, she was reclaiming her own narrative. The past no longer held dominion over her future. She would not allow the sins of the past to dictate their present or future. The rivals' attempts to sow discord were futile against the unbreakable bond she and John had forged. As the confrontation reached its climax, Sophia took a stand that would resonate far beyond that moment. She confronted the rival businessman directly, her voice steady but fierce. She declared that she would not let him manipulate their lives, nor would she allow him to use her family's history as a weapon. Her loyalty to John was unwavering, and she would fight for their love, even if it meant facing the ghosts of her past. The rival businessman, faced with the undeniable strength of Sophia's conviction, faltered. The crowd had turned. They were no longer spectators but allies in a collective stand against injustice. As Sophia's words hung in the air, she felt a surge of hope. She had not only defended John's honor, but had also reclaimed her own identity. In that moment, she realized that love had the power to heal, to unite, and to challenge even the deepest of divides. With the rival businessman exposed for his deceit, the consequences of his actions began to unfold. The community rallied around John and Sophia, their support a testament to the strength of love and loyalty. In the aftermath, John and Sophia found solace in one another's arms. They had faced the storm together, emerging not just unscathed but stronger than ever. As they embraced, the world around them faded away. The trials they had endured had solidified their bond, and they stood ready to face whatever the future might hold, hand in hand. Love had triumphed, and in that moment of shared victory, they found not just solace but a renewed sense of purpose. Together, they would continue to build a life rooted in love, resilience, and the unwavering belief that their story was only just beginning.